I am absolutely delighted to introduce our alumni speaker for today's talk, Rishi Chopra, who will be sharing his insights on what it takes to be a leader from an ethnic minority. Rishi graduated from University of Westminster in 2003 with a BSc in biochemistry. He's worked at many of the major pharmaceutical companies, including Roche, Janssen, and GlaxoSmithKline. He's currently at Biogen, where he is Senior Director, Head of International Pharmacovigilance. Rishi will offer his insight and advice on leadership as someone from an ethnic minority. Rishi is driven by this belief that companies are most prosperous and successful when they embrace true diversity. Rishi also believes that your skills as a leader are constantly being developed and you never stop learning, which is why he enjoys what he does every day.
It's my pleasure to have this talk with you guys today on this topic, and it's been a while since I've left Westminster and further education, so it's a great opportunity for me to reflect on my experiences to date, and just hoping that I can share something with you that might be of benefit, because I can appreciate upon reflection what it was like to be in university and thinking what would be the next step and having aspirations of getting somewhere but not necessarily knowing what would lay ahead. So just a quick disclaimer on any information or any opinions described in this presentation are solely my own, and they don't necessarily reflect the opinions or positions of any organization that I've worked for in the past, or Biogen, which is the organization that I work for now. So I'm just going to cover first of all my background, just so you know the context of where I come from essentially. So what I count as my foundation, I think, in terms of who I am and how that has had an influence on my career. As you can probably tell from my name, I am of Indian descent. Both my parents are from India. I was born in the UK and I've grown up in Hounslow Central. That's probably the nicest picture that you'll have of Hounslow right now, but it was a fantastic place to live growing up. Growing up, when we talk about the concept of ethnic minority and diversity, it was a place where the ethnic minority was almost the majority in that area. Melting pot of cultures at the same time, so there were other cultures that you grew up with, but it was predominantly of an Asian community there. I think Hounslow has changed now for good. It's changed because there is even more diversity in terms of the community that's there, but that has a big influence in terms of my background and my outlook, not only on life, but also my professional career. So I'm going to share now a little bit about my career journey. So a lot of people think that when you say you love your job, it's the same thing as you love your career. Those aren't the same things. Whilst I love my career, and a career is something that you build over time. A career is not something that you have with just one job or one placement, and you are constantly building your career. So I've not finished my career, therefore by definition, I'm still building it. But have I always loved my job? I don't always love my job even now on a daily basis. Do I love my job in general? For sure I do now. Have there been jobs that I've had in the past that I've always loved? For sure I have not. And I would say, well, that's the beauty of building a career, that there are going to be lessons that you learn in terms of the selections that you make, in the jobs that you take on, and sometimes you'll make the right decision, sometimes you'll not make the right decision, but there are always learning opportunities. After Westminster, I did a master's, doing a biochemistry bachelor's. At that point, the only one thing that I knew that I was not suited to working in the lab. I wasn't really clear what I would do other than that. I had a family member that was working in the pharmaceutical industry at that time, but that was not much more valuable in terms of knowledge, in terms of directing me as to where I would go. So my feeling was that I would do a master's just to kind of give me, number one, a little bit more time, but number two, give me an additional qualification that would probably help me decide where I wanted to go in my career or how I wanted to start my career. I tried one master's, which didn't work out well for me. It was just far too difficult for me. It was medical genetics and immunology, and that's a very difficult subject. Kudos to all of those that are studying those subjects. So I decided to do pharmaceutical science and management, a much more generalized master's, but the idea of that master's was to give insight across the full breadth of the pharmaceutical industry. But I am not a scientist by definition. What I do on a day-to-day basis is not related very, very close to the science. I must be aware of it. I must be able to understand the terminology. I must be able to talk to scientists. But what I do myself is not about the science necessarily directly. But what motivates me is the fact what I do has a direct influence on whether patients have access to life-changing medication. So that is my primary motivation, that I have the ability to influence the well-being of people globally in what I do. How I do that is related to the relationships that I make internally, externally, putting in and collaborating with stakeholders that are across my organization to do the right thing for the patient. So that's where my motivation is. And you have to look at motivation for yourself over the course of your career as your North Star. Your motivation is the best thing that will drive the career choices that you make, the decisions that you make throughout the course of your career, and it will probably drive you to the areas that you will enjoy the most in your career. What do you define as success for yourself personally? Some people will say that the financial aspect is success, so reaching the highest levels so that you can get the highest compensation, the highest salary is the measure of success, is the driver. For some people, success is being recognized by your peers or your colleagues in your company, outside of the company, for doing a good job. Success is getting feedback from external people, whether it's patient advocacy or whether it's to do with healthcare professionals, saying that the value that the company gives is immense. I know I played my role in that. So that could be success, but success is something really important for you to define. There's no right or wrong answer in success, in my opinion. It's really down to you, what suits you, because it's your career. But most new managers are not ready to lead at the time that they start in management. And so there are over 2 million people being promoted into management roles each year. And that's why training is critical. So firstly, when I talked about beyond the job, what can you do? My advice is, if you are looking to go into leadership, always reinforce your learning with opportunities that can develop you as a leader. It's a really good question. So I'll give you an example. There is another organization called Black Pharma, and that is a type of organization that promotes education in potential areas for those that might have an interest. And so these are called career clinics. So my advice would be is to look up the potential for career clinics out there. Again, LinkedIn is a great resource for finding career clinics in potential areas and reaching out and finding out what opportunities are, what potential jobs are. At the beginning of my career, I did not see many senior leaders that looked just like me. So that's the strapline I used on LinkedIn, and very true. So I didn't see many Asian or Indian or ethnic minority leaders at that time. And I think it's changed now. My boss is an Asian woman. My boss's boss is an Asian woman. And then on our senior leadership team, my executive C-suite leadership team is extremely diverse. Women, men, different ethnic backgrounds, different backgrounds, full stop. It's an extremely diverse team. So I think it's changing a huge amount. And that's just not my company. I've seen that in other companies in the same industry that I have. But I'm a firm believer, based on what's happening in society, full stop, it's almost like there's been another step in an awakening with the Black Lives Matter movement, which greatly support, as well as everything else. There is a massive focus on diversity. Diversity is not a checkbox anymore for any company. In my opinion, now it's more of a recognition that unless you have a diverse workforce, you're not going to be successful. And that's because the stats show that those organizations that are the most successful are successful because of the diversity that they have.